Welcome back, everyone. I hope you grabbed something to drink, were able to have a good chat about the last challenge that we had, and get ready for the next challenge. Before we get going on the second plenary address, I wanted to share with you something that I forgot to tell you last night, okay? Several people have asked me, when are we going to be able to just have the documentary so that we can just watch it every day, all day long? Well, the answer to that is you're going to have to wait. We are going to make it freely available in May. Until then, we are encouraging you to gather with friends or for your church and to host a screening. We want to come and we want to show this to people in your community. And so if you would like to do that, please reach out to me. We are willing to do this as much as people would like to do this. Then we will do a build-up toward May for a free release, and we will release it 1 month prior to the Southern Baptist Convention and use it as an advocacy piece. Since the second reading of the constitutional amendment will occur this summer, and there will be more bad news coming out of the Southern Baptist Convention, we want to make the good news. And so that is the plan. If you and your community would like to host a screening, please reach out to me, or you're going to have to wait for 7 months. On with the show. Our second lecture is going to be from the Reverend Mrs. Alicia Zorzoli, who will be presenting to us what does it mean to be a Latina Baptist minister in the USA. And the Reverend Dr. Anira Cano is going to introduce Reverend Zorzoli to us.
Buenos dias. Today I have the distinct honor and pleasure of presenting today's keynote for Latinas Baptist in Ministry, Reverend Alicia Sedaka Zorzoli. First, I'll share her official biography, and then I'll share my personal biography of her. Reverend Zorzoli was born in Uruguay from Baptist missionary parents. Reverend Zorzoli was a professor at the International Baptist Seminary in Argentina for 12 years in the areas of writing, Spanish, English, and preaching. For 23 years, Reverend Zorzoli worked at the Baptist Spanish Publishing House in El Paso as an editor, women's department director, youth department director, and editorial director. During that time, she created a 4-year missions education curriculum called Aventuras Misioneras, and was the chief editor for 2 printed magazines, La Ventana, which is well known throughout of Latin America, and La Solución. Among her published works are Pinafores and Pelotas, a children's missionary book, Dios, esto no estaba en mis planes, a book in English named God, this was not in my plans. Other books, book chapters, and magazine articles for women's Christian magazines in Latin America. After retiring and moving to Arlington, Texas, Reverend Zorzoli does freelance translation and editorial work for different ministries and speaks at conferences in the U.S. and Latin America. As a preacher and a conference speaker, she has traveled to over 52 countries. Reverend Zorzoli holds a licenciatura, or bachelor's in Teología, from International Baptist Seminary in Argentina, and a Master of Divinity from Southwestern Baptist Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. She is married to the Reverend Ruben Zorzoli. They have 2 children, grown children, and 4 grandchildren. Alicia is one of my foremothers, and the foremother of many Latinas around the world. During the 80s, she was teaching preaching classes to both women and men in Argentina. Amen. She is a sought-out Bible teacher and preacher in many Baptist circles. Almost anywhere you go in Latin America, if you mention Alicia Sorsoli, many will say, "Oh, I know her. She's my friend." She is quite the icon. At 18 years old, in El Paso, Texas, at Iglesia Bautista Internacional, she was the first woman I had ever had the privilege to hear preach. It was at that age that I began to believe that God could be calling women in all areas of leadership and ministry. Since then, she has been my favorite preacher. When she preaches, she has the brilliant ability of making scriptures just jump right out at you and making it so real in our lives. She is a hero to many of us, a mentor, a sister, a friend, a mother, a grandmother, Abuela Sorsoli for my Valentina, and she's also a pastor. On any given day, you can find Alicia taking care of babies in the church nursery, teaching Sunday school, leading a house church out of her living room, preaching on another continent, comforting people in despair, writing, editing, or translating important books. She is a wise woman who is not afraid to challenge you, but a woman who loves and cares deeply. I know that I would have the blessing of many of my Latina sisters to say this, and I dare to say this, that on behalf of the many women in Latin America that you have empowered, from all the way from the US to Argentina and to many other countries, I say thank you, Alicia, for serving Jesus faithfully in all of your giftings and all of your abilities. Thank you for being such a powerful testimony and proclaimer of the goodness of God. My dear sisters and brothers, may you be richly blessed as I am. Please join me in recognizing Alicia Sorsoli.
I don't know where that lady she talked about is. But thank you, Anita. Join me in prayer. God, please speak to me and speak through me, and may your name be glorified. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I'd like to congratulate you for deciding to celebrate this anniversary, this milestone, by enlarging the size of your tent, by focusing on these two groups that are part of the Baptist family in the USA, has been a part of this family, and now we are trying to make ourselves a little more knowledgeable to you. I don't have 40 years here as a minister in the USA, but I have 36, so maybe that's why they invited me to come and speak. 36 years here. And before I start, I just like to clarify something regarding the Latina or the Hispanic, which one is what. Hispanics and Latinas are often used interchangeable. And actually, they mean two different things, although most of the time they interfere with each other. But Hispanic refers to people who speak Spanish or are descendants from people who speak Spanish, while Latina or Latino refers to people who are from or are descendants from some country in Latin America. So most of the time, these two terms overlap, but they're different. And so when we speak about Latinos or Latinas, it's one thing, but when you Google something about us, you're gonna find that they talk of us as Hispanics. But let me start telling you that Latinos come in all shapes and sizes and colors. There's nothing that physically identifies us. Not even our language. Not even our language. Let me give you an example of that. When we just came to the States, my husband pastored a Hispanic church. Everybody was Mexican descendant. 3 months after we were there, the treasurer of the church comes and says, Pastor, with all due respect, we don't understand a word of what you're preaching. And he was preaching in Spanish. And there was a Hispanic church, but not even a language unifies us. Let me share something about my personal experience. I come from the bottom part of our continent, the southernmost part of America, Argentina. I was born in Uruguay, daughter of missionaries. My family, the whole family is from Argentina, but I was born in Uruguay from an Argentine pastoral and missionary family. And before coming to this country 36 years ago, I can say that like we were living the American dream in Argentina. I was living the American dream in Argentina. My husband and I were pastors of the Baptist seminary over there. Our families lived close by. We lived in a nice house provided by the seminary because my husband was the academic dean. Our children were very much involved in church and church activities. We were happy. I was happy there. And on top of that, as Anira said, I had the privilege of preaching to men and women at the seminary. That was an amazing opportunity, and I was happy with that because as somebody I heard yesterday and today, God called me to ministry when I was 12 years old on a GA camp. Being an MK, and you know that I'm not young, I was sunbeam in Spain because my parents were missionaries in Spain. I was GA in Argentina. I was Baptist Young Women in Uruguay. I was from WMU in Argentina, and then here, and then Latin America, and then the whole world. I went through all those organizations, and God called me when I was 12 years old in a camp at the GAs in Argentina. So when we got an invitation to come to the States to enlarge our ministry, to be able to reach Hispanics or Latinos in all Latin America, we felt that God was calling us to be foreign missionaries here. And as I told you, I wasn't too happy to come here. I knew what I was coming to because, as you heard, I have a degree from Southwestern Baptist Seminary. I had lived here 2 years and then went back to teach seminary in Argentina. I knew what I was coming from, and it wasn't a happy picture. It wasn't a happy picture. So this is what I found when we came here. I found myself being offered a position with a lower salary than the one for men in that position. I questioned that, but anyway, I accepted it. Another thing, in another organization I was involved with, they had some policies with which I didn't agree. This time, I strongly stated my beliefs, even at the risk of losing my position. But God did his mighty work, as he always does, and even I stated very firmly that I was able to continue. I don't know how, I don't know why, but God did it. Another thing, for a short time, we were members of an Anglo church. And I remember one Sunday, we entered the sanctuary, the whole family, and then comes a deacon to greet us. And he shares my husband's hand, and I extend my hand. I had to keep my hand like this, because he didn't want to shake my hand. And I said, "Ooh, how are you? Nice to meet you, God bless you." Another time, I was invited to speak at a women's state-level congress in a neighboring country. And after that event, I decided to stay to participate, to attend the whole state, Baptist State Congress for the whole churches of that state. It's called the Association Baptist Churches on that state. Okay, on the last day of that event, the chair of the association comes and tells me that the guest preacher couldn't make it. And he asked me if I would be willing to take his place. And of course, I said, yes, I will. One of the things I learned from my travels is always to take a sermon with you. Just in case. So I said, yes, I'll do that. So the time comes, I'm sitting on the first pew, and the pastor of that church comes. And he says, Mrs. Sorsoli, I had to tell you something. In this church, women are not allowed to preach from the pulpit. So he asked if I would agree to preach from the floor. Confession time. The old Alicia thought, listen, you guy, I'm rescuing you. I'm saving you from embarrassment. Go and find yourself another preacher at the last minute. But the sweet Christian Alicia thought, you're invited to do what God called you to do? Just get up and do it. And that's what I did. So that was part of my culture shock coming here from Argentina. But that's not the whole story. There are so many other things that I found here. I found Hispanic churches besides the one my husband pastored that were led by pastors from southern countries in Argentina, and they were happy to have women preaching, like the church Anita talked about. I also found our current Hispanic church, which decided without my asking that I needed to be ordained as a pastor. And they went ahead and did it. I didn't ask for that, but they did it, and I'm so happy and thankful for that. I also found a wonderful opportunity of serving through the Baptist World Alliance for 5 years and traveled through all the world, as you have heard, and met women in so many different countries that are pastors, that are ministering, that are preachers, that are seminary professors. And I say, wow, this is not just in my country. There are many countries who are doing that. And you have just to go to Cuba, go to China, go to Korea, and you're going to find that if it weren't for women, for the Baptist women over there, the Baptist work wouldn't be what it is right now. So there's hope. There is hope. What you're seeing here is not the whole picture. It's not the whole enchilada. You're missing many things, okay? So I found so many things about that. I found here more than 30 years having the opportunity of ministering to Latinas through all the continent. And as Anita said, I have friends all over. They dress me. Every time I go to the countries, they dress me. I've slept on their homes. I've eaten at their houses. That's amazing experience. I learned so much with them, seeing their creativity, seeing so many things that they can do with so little. It enlarges my vision and gives me hope. During those 23 years that I served in El Paso, I was telling our people there, because I traveled so much, that for me, traveling and going to our countries was like a breath of fresh air. And I needed that to keep me going until the next trip. I needed that because it was so amazing. It still is. It still is so amazing to see how women are doing what God wants them to do. I also here had the opportunity of publishing those 2 books. I also here had the opportunity of an amazing opportunity of doing my part in providing training and support for Latinas called to ministry. So you see, as we were hearing a little while ago, there's a balance. And thank God for that balance. Because those sad things can be sweetened with so many sweet things. And that's that's what God does among us. So I want to give you a quick overview of the history of the beginnings of Latinos in the USA. Twyla Hernandez, she's an associate professor of Christian mission at Campbellsville University, writes in 2019, and she says, I read it, Latinos are not newcomers in the USA. In fact, this important demographic group lived here before long before the geographical lines of this country were drawn. Remember that. In fact, America's oldest church, which has been around for over 400 years, is hiding in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I hope you can see the photo there. This is a Hispanic church, the oldest church building in Latin America. That chapel dates from 1628. However, oral history suggests it was actually built in 1610. I think the second shows it. It was built by Mexican aborigines in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So you know that, if you remember the history of this country. The Mexican-American War, followed by the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and followed by the Gadsden Purchase in 1853, extended U.S. control over a wide range of territory that was held before by Spain and Mexico. And that territory included the states of New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and California. Did I say Texas too? Texas too. So there were people, Hispanics living here, in that area. It was their country, it was Mexico. So when that territory became USA, the vast majority of Hispanic populations chose to stay here, and they became full US citizens. So they were here. They were mainly Catholics, and those are the first Latino populations here. So now, coming to our times, according to the Pew Research Center, I think we have that in the next slide, in 2022, there were 63.7 million Hispanics living in the States. 63.7 million. That means almost 20% of the whole population of the United States are Hispanics or Latinos. Of these 63.7 million, more than 37 million are Mexicans. So more than half of the Latino population here comes from Mexican. Then there are 6 million Puerto Ricans. Where's the Puerto Rican? There. 6 million of these people. 2.5 million Salvadorians, more than 2 million Dominican, more than 2 million Cubans. Those are the largest populations here that comprise the 63.7 million of Hispanics as to the past year, 2022. Now, Megan Winter writes in The Atlantic, July 26, 2021, and I read, Latinos are the fastest growing group of evangelicals in the country. The fastest growing group of evangelicals in the country. And she wrote, Latino Protestants in particular have higher levels of religiosity, meaning they tend to go to church, to pray, to read the Bible more often than both Anglo-Protestants and Latino Catholics. Wow, we have something to be proud of. If we want to see something regarding the work among the Hispanics done by the Baptists, the Baptist work among the Hispanics in the States. Baptist work was taking place among Hispanic speakers by the early 1800s. When the American government annexed Texas in 1845, the United States added Mexicans, a lot of Mexicans to the population. So the history of the Baptist work among Spanish-speaking people, however, predates the Texas annexation. It was before. Latino historian Dr. Josue Grijalva records, and I quote, as early as 1837, the call for missionaries went out from Texas to come to work among the Mexicans living in this area. 1837. In 1866, the First Baptist Church in San Antonio began a Spanish-speaking mission, but that mission lasted only 6 months. So many years have passed from those early beginnings in Texas of the Baptist ministries, Baptist ministers, Baptist missionaries starting to try to evangelize those Mexicans with Catholic backgrounds. Many years have passed from that date to the time of having Latina Baptist pastors in Texas. In 210, Centro Cristiano de Oración in Houston called Giselle Bourbon as pastor and became the first Hispanic Texas Baptist church with a women pastor. In January 2018, just a couple of years ago, January 2018, Melba Zapata became the second Hispanic woman to serve as pastor of a Texas Baptist congregation, New Wine Church in La Feria. The church had ordained her to the gospel ministry in 2009, but called her to serve as senior pastor 9 years after. That was Texas, and I want to clarify something here. I'm mentioning especially the Baptist work in Texas or in the southern states. I don't have a lot of info about other states, especially in the east or the north. And we know that in other Baptist groups, they were already ordaining and allowing women, Baptist women, to preach. But I'm referring to the area I know most, and I just couldn't find a lot. We don't have many information about that. We don't have data about other states like I found from my state. So after Texas came California. Even though California has always had a large Hispanic population, Baptist work among Californian Hispanics did not begin until 1947. And that was when Jesus Rios moved from San Antonio, Texas, to San Jose, California, and then to Los Angeles in California. There in Los Angeles, according to historian Dr. Leon Malbec, said that he says, and I quote, "A strong Hispanic church grew up under his ministry, the ministry of Jesus Rios. He also formed a string of missions in the Los Angeles area that later became churches." So first Texas, then California, and from there on, Spanish-speaking work began in Arizona in 1945 and in Colorado 1955, very few years ago. Now, that's a very quick overview of the beginnings. But let's think about the current picture of Latina pastors or Latino pastors in the USA. According to CPS data science, they found the following key factors about pastors. And this comes from 2022, from last year. They found that they are over, and I think they have that too, they are over 29,944 pastors currently employed in the USA. So that's not just Baptist. The whole pastoral from evangelical churches, almost 30,000, 29,944. So from that number, 12,000.9 pastors are women, 87.9% are men. That means that 3,900 women pastors we have in the USA. That's not just Baptist, again, the whole evangelical group. In the whole evangelical group of churches, we have 3,900 women pastors ordained. 9% of those pastors are Hispanic or Latinos. Last year, Lifeway published findings of the research of Hispanic churches in the United States. They found the same numbers. They found that there are almost 8 in 9 pastors are male. That means that an estimated 400 Latina pastors are pastoring in this country. Not just Baptists, again. 400 Latina ordained pastors. And I wanted to personalize these figures, so I asked some of my Latina Baptist colleagues about their first encounters with Baptist Latina ministers. One of them, when asked, when did you first encounter a Baptist Latina minister, being a preacher of a leadership position at church in the USA, one of them says, when I arrived to Philadelphia in September 1987 to go to seminary, and she was with the American Baptist Convention. Another one, she just said it a little while ago, said, when I was 18 years old at Iglesia Bautista Internacional, it was an HBC church in El Paso. Another one said, it was my pastor's wife, Rosalba Núñez. I had never seen a woman preach from the pulpit before. It was around 1994, and I was astonished. So my second question to those colleagues and friends said, when did you meet an ordained Baptist Latina pastor for the first time in the USA? One of them says in 1967, that lady was co-pastor with the American Baptist Convention in Philadelphia. Another one says it was in 2015 at a CBF gathering. And another said, before my ordination, I never met an ordained Baptist Latina pastor. So she was the first one. Now, in order to have a clearer picture of a Latina Baptist in USA, it will help us to see her under 4 paradigms. The first paradigm is the paradigm of geography. And from that, I mean that the closer your place of origin is to the USA, the more difficult for a Latina leader is to be ordained pastor or to just preach. On the other hand, the farther south you go, the picture starts to change dramatically, and I just said that. Very soon, when I came to the States, I was told, women don't preach, women give devotionals. And the interesting thing is that the ones who said that were Latinas. They were Latina women from the area. And they were the ones who told me, women don't preach here. We do devotionals. So up to now, besides my own church, in my 36 years in Texas, I am often invited to speak at churches, mostly at Hispanic women's events, but never invited to preach. A week from now, I will be in Chile. They are gonna be, yes, come with me. They are gonna be celebrating the 100th anniversary of their Women's Missionary Union. And they invited me to preach. So you have to consider the geography of where the Latina is coming, because there's a lot of difference. The second paradigm is the socioeconomic one. By this, I'm referring to the social situation in which Latina finds herself here in the USA. Even when that Latina is a Christian, considering God's call to ministry, sociology plays a big and important role for her. So we have to consider Is she a recent migrant? What is the reason for her to be a Latina in the USA? If she is a recent migrant, she might be struggling, battling for survival. She needs to survive to put food on her table for her and her family. And in that situation, many times the church becomes just her lifesaver. But her calling, if she feels called, her calling must be just postponed because she had more important priorities. She's in the survival mode here. Or maybe she's from a second or third generation of Hispanics here, migrants. So that may be that this is the only culture she knows, but she's still maintaining some traits from her ancestry. She's still maintaining her culture. She may find battling herself between both cultures, questioning about the difference. What is happening? Where am I? Am I a Hispanic? Am I a US citizen? Who I am? Or the third socioeconomic paradigm may be for someone who is a descendant of those first Mexican settlers who were here in this area from centuries. So she has almost completely lost her Latina roots. And it's becoming harder for her to understand herself as a Latina. So socioeconomics plays a big role in her life. The third paradigm is the paradigm of ancestry. While I have to confess that my case may be or is many different from the majority of the Latinas here. Because as we have said in the statistics, the majority of Latina Baptists have come from our neighboring country, from Mexico. That means that they are bringing a very strong Mexican culture. And in this case, we need to consider two things of that culture. The first one is the Catholic background. Catholics in general have no concept of ministry for lay people. They don't have a place to minister the church attendants. They were not encouraged to read the Bible. They were encouraged to believe what the church taught, what our traditions taught, not the Bible. So even for women, it was hard for them to change that mentality. And that mentality affects every area of their lives. If that lady becomes an evangelical, if that lady starts thinking that God may be calling her to ministry, will she be blaming her family name? Will she be blaming her culture? Will she be blemishing the honor of her ancestors? That's something that we need to consider. The other thing that we need to consider is machismo, male dominance. Men ruled over family and over church, period. One of the most loved mariachi songs is called El Rey, the King. And in some of the lyrics, they sing, with or without money, I always do what I want. My saying is the law. I may not have much, but I keep being the king. They love to sing that. So we have the paradigm of geography, we have the paradigm of socioeconomics, we have the paradigm of perks, but we also have of ancestry, but we also have the paradigms of perks. One of the perks is being bilingual. Having a second language, whatever that language would be, is a real asset. And that's a blessing that we can relate or trying to relate in another language that is not our hard one. The other perk that we have is having a wider worldview. Being biracial, bilingual helps to avoid being so close-minded and being able to accept differences and having a wider perspective of things. Things are not always like we were taught. They can be different opinions, and we accept that. The other perk are family ties. For me, this is one of the strongest assets in Latina culture, family. You're never alone. You're never alone. Family is always there for you. Each family event, be happy or sad, is an opportunity to be together, albeit sometimes having to travel long distances for that. The other perk is the respect and care for your elders. We learn from them. We look for their advice. We try to take care of the older people. It's rare to find elderly people, Latinos, in nursing homes. The other perk is traditions, food, music, festivities, even religion are considered very important. And church becomes your family in the real sense of the word. So, trying to finish, how can we help Christian Latinas overcome the boundaries and enjoy the freedom of pursuing God's calling to ministry? What are their specific needs and what BWM can do for them? First one, be intentional in identifying potential Latina women ministries. Christian women who God may be calling to ministry, and we may be surprised at the number of those ladies, because many of these women may don't even realize it. They may think that it's not possible for them to be called by God, to be ministers. Second, help them confront their calling and consider it as a real thing coming from the omnipotent. Help them to be faithful to that calling, no matter what or who does or doesn't agree with that. Latinas who are feeling called by God, they don't need to break a glass ceiling. They have a concrete ceiling to break. It's not a glass ceiling for them. Why? Because besides being a woman, they have to break also with their culture, most of the time with their own families. They were not raised to think like that. So it's a hard ceiling they have to break. Provide opportunities for them to learn sound biblical interpretation of God's message in His Word regarding women in ministry. Here I would like to mention an organization that exists exactly for that, to identify, to develop, to empower Christian Latina leaders. It's called Christian Latina Leadership Institute, CLLI, and we have here some members and some of my students from that organization. It's been my privilege to be part of this ministry for many years as a faculty, as a board member of the board of directors. And what about those Latinas who are already ministers in the USA? Look for them. And when you find them, be the one about whom Isaiah wrote when he wrote, "How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns." Told those Latinas, your God reigns, and if he reigns, nobody could be against you. Second, let them know that they're not alone. Encourage them to find mentors, friends, and a network that will affirm them. Third, tell them to persevere in spite of all obstacles, being faithful to their calling. Find good support systems where women in ministry are supported, are normalized. Encourage them to be creative in the ways of doing ministry, to prepare themselves even in other areas because they might have to be bivocational. And prepare and provide a database of ministry opportunities. That would be wonderful. If we as Latina leadership can use a resource that you may provide, informing about opportunities in different churches, in different places, in different areas for a Latina leader to serve, that would be something amazing. Finally, I want to share something about the God in my Bible. The God in my Bible was very creative in making his children different but equal. The God in my Bible was extremely happy when he created women. The God in my Bible intentionally allowed many examples in his manual about women occupying ministerial roles. For instance, he wanted the whole world to know that the greatest sermon ever preached was preached by a group of women very different from each other. But he sent these women, this bunch of women, to preach that Jesus is alive. The God in my Bible keeps calling and providing opportunities for his daughters to be all he planned them to be. And this includes pastors, preachers, seminary professors, missionaries, chaplains, any other ministry he chooses to call them to serve. I just love the God in my Bible. God bless you.
Thank you so much for another challenging word. Such a big piece of thinking about our Latina sisters in ministry is thinking about immigration. And so I asked Anira if she would come and share 60 seconds with you of how to get involved in advocacy around immigration rights.
Really quick, I just want to quote something I said a few years ago. If you care, and I'm going to adapt it, if you care about Latinas, you can't ignore immigration. You must advocate. It is a big part of who we are as part of our ministries, as part of our churches. We have a group of young people that, who have a permit to work here in the United States, young people who were brought to our country by their parents seeking a better life for them and safety. They're known as the Dreamers. 600,000 of them right now have what we call is DACA. And they are in lots of danger of losing this permission to work in this country, to give to our country, to be valuable members of our cities, of our states. And I ask and urge of you to help us advocate for them. Call your members of Congress, call your representatives, call your senators, and say why dreamers are important to you. If you don't know one, I will introduce you to a dreamer who will tell you how great they are and what God is doing in their lives. On the CBF website for advocacy, you will hear stories of young women who are nonprofit leaders in Texas. They're my girls from my church. Get to know a dreamer and tell their story to a senator or to a member of Congress. Tell your churches that they are valuable members of our country. And tell your churches that without them, our country is not the same. We need them. If you care about Latinas, if you care about the Latino church, you will advocate.
Thank you, Anira. So we are going to take another quick break, and let's get started back at 11:15 with our panel. So come back soon.